What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to welcome you all to another edition of Wayne's Perspective, where we operate in discipline, decency, integrity, and respect. Going into the first weekend of April 2024, I hope everyone is doing okay. Things are going pretty good on my end. The time just going by fast and, taking every day one day at a time. But overall, everything is good. I hope you all are doing well. All right. So before I get to today's post, I want to talk a little bit about hip hop, but also this is something that I talked about in my introduction video. And again, for those who haven't checked that out, please go back and check that out as soon as you can. It basically details what my channel is going to be about. But for the sake of this particular video today, I want to talk a little bit about how I got into hip hop and all of that, and basically leading up to where things are today. And even though I covered this in the introduction, I feel as though I wanted to talk about it again now. So, everybody who knows me knows that not only did I start listening to hip hop at the age of 5, but it was my dad, who's also named Wayne. He turned me on to it at an early age. I mean, a very early age. One of the first hip hop albums that I became exposed to was Grandmaster Flash, Badop Boom Bang. I still own that, and just listening to that, it always brings back memories, even though it's probably not one of the more fondly remembered Grandmaster Flash albums. That album, holds a strong nostalgic vibe with me to this day because, again, that's one of the first albums I heard. And then, as I got older and things like that, my dad, he turned me on to a lot of stuff. And I remember way back when, I remember when he had a Cadillac Seville back in the day, a black one, and he had the EPMD Business as Usual tape. And I remember listening to that. Can't recall which song though, but I remember listening to that. And then, of course, as the years went by and things like that, when he would pick me up and I would ride with him, spend a weekend with him, he always had this brown case of tapes in the back of his car. And I swear, every time I rode with him, I would always go into that case and open it. And every time I saw all those tapes, I was like, man, you know. And even though most of the time it was the same stuff, it was just the fact that, man, all these tapes. So of course, after a while, when he stopped collecting tapes, he turned over the case to me, and I held on to those tapes for the longest time. And then from there, he would still give me dub tapes, and things like that, name it. He gave it to me. He gave me Mob Deep the Infamous, Gangstar Hard to Earn. I mean, just to name two. So it's a lot of albums that hold a strong nostalgic vibe with me to this day. And of course, as the mid, oh yeah, and just to name some other ones, the KRS One self-titled album from '95, Dog Pound, Dog Food, the Junior Mafia Conspiracy album, even though that wasn't that good outside of three songs, and longtime fans know which three songs I'm talking about. Fat Joe's Jealous Ones, Envy, Dog Pound, Dog Food. I mean, a whole lot of things. And then once 1996 hit, that's when he really stopped. Not only did my dad stop collecting tapes, he was starting to get into CDs more. And as the years went on, he just stopped listening to it. And in fact, if I was to talk to him today, he probably wouldn't be able to tell me the last time he listened to a rap song and enjoyed it. So, from that point all the way up until present day, I always credit him with turning me on to hip hop. And then if I can tell a similar story that I've told before, in the mid 90s when hip hop was at its peak, you know, he would give me, tapes and things like that. And when my mom would find out, she would always get on his case. Why you give him that tape? Why you got him listening to that stuff? All that cussing. He don't need to be listening to that stuff. And my dad would always just chuckle and respond accordingly. But even as a young boy, I was always mature for my age. I knew what I was listening to, even though when you consider my age at the time, I had no business listening to it. But for the most part, I knew what I was listening to and I reacted accordingly and appropriately. So that brings me to today. So mad shout out and props to my dad, Wayne, for turning me on to hip hop because without him, I don't know who would have turned me on to it. So, with all that being said, that brings us to today's topic. But before I get to that, I just want to preface it by saying that, you know, This particular session is going to be the first of quite a few hip hop related posts on the channel. Um, and as you could probably see from the title, it is going to be about Kool G Rap, my number 10 favorite artist of all time, or should I say my favorite MC of all time. So I'm definitely going to be talking about him, his discography, giving my thoughts and things like that. So we can proceed. So before we actually get to the post, let me share some with you all. Okay, you see this right here? Now these are my ratings. As you can see, by song, by album, and adjective description. Now this does come as a direct influence from the Source magazine. Remember when that used to be the quote unquote hip hop Bible back in the day? I still have classic issues from the 90s, and I'm still trying to get my hands on some of the ones that I used to have back in the day. But with the Source magazine, every single day becoming collector's items is almost like, okay, you're going to pay a an expensive price for them if you don't get a deal, a good deal. So yes, this is a direct influence from the Source magazine, and longtime fans will remember the mics. So for example, 5 out of 5, or in this case, 5 stars. A 5-star album is the equivalent to a 5 mic album, classic material. And what's one of the first albums that come to mind when it comes to 5 stars or 5 mics? That's Nas Illmatic, the greatest album of all time. And trust me, in due time, we're gonna get to a Nas post on my channel. So just look out for that. And then, just go down the list. These are my ratings right here. And yes, hip hop ratings are subjective for the most part. And what's interesting most of the time is that, excuse me, what's interesting most of the time is that it always has and still, creates a real dynamic in terms of a discussion about albums and what they're worth, and what this person like and what that person doesn't like, and all of that. At the end of the day, your own entertainment is the important thing. And and again, that's what makes it so interesting. Hell, one person's 5-star album could be another person's 1-star album. You just never know. um and then and I want to throw this in there too. You see that 0 out of 5 and 0 stars. Now, I've given a few songs the 0 out of 5 rating, and I've never given an album a 0-star rating. So a 0-star rating is basically, not only is it self-explanatory as you see on the screen, but that's just an album that is not worth the coins in the change meter. So, and I doubt we'll ever see an album that's like that bad that you can't give a rating to it. So again, these are my ratings. So as I talk about albums and things like that, you're going to see these ratings by song, by album, and of course my adjective description. Classic material, superior, excellent, solid slash very good, good slash decent, slightly above average, and so on and so on. So, and like I said, it's all subjective, but it's always been a good thing when you discuss hip hop like that. And quite frankly, we don't really have that many discussions like that about hip hop anymore. So kind of a lost art, just like so many other things are. But what can we do? Um, so so continuing on, like I said, I just wanted to share my ratings on that. So now we can finally move to today's presentation, and that would be Kool G Rap. Like I said, my top 10 favorite, well, excuse me, my number 10 favorite MC of all time. This brother, you know, what can I say about him? Definitely one of the all-time greats. And as far as my top 10 favorite MCs of all time goes, he's probably the most underrated on the list. He's been putting in work since 86. I think the first time I heard him was the Symphony, as probably that's when most of us probably heard him for the first time. Yo, Marley gives a slice. I get nice, and my voice is twice as horrifying as Vincent Price. I mean, the brother could flow. He said his raps burn your mouth like hot sauce. So, you know, I mean, just always came with the wordplay, knew how to tell stories and things like that. And I'm going to get into that in this post. But yeah, Mr. G Rap, definitely one of the all-time greats in hip-hop. So continuing on. So now what I'm going to do here, and this is going to be my first hip-hop post on the channel, so it's always room for improvement. So Let me know what you think about what you're saying, either, when you finish or if you happen to replay it later. Let me know what you think. I'm always going to do things like this. And like I said, always room for improvement. So definitely let me know what you think. So continuing on here. So now we're going to start with Kool G Rap and DJ Polo's debut. But before I get into this, you see this compact disc digital audio symbol right there? Now, the only reason why I got that there is because this in this video, as well as follow-up videos, that symbol is going to mean that I own this album on CD. And in this case, with the Road to the Riches album, I own the original pressing of this album. So going forward, whenever you see this, that means I own the CD. you know so again, getting to it, we got the Kool G Rap and DJ Polo debut album, Road to the Riches, released on March 14th, 1989. All songs were produced by the legendary Marley Marl, who still really don't get the credit that he deserves as a producer, because that man has a house of hits, of course. So, definitely probably one of the, not only one of the all-time greats, but definitely, more on the underrated side, um, so we'll be talking about him for a bit in this project as well, in this post, I should say. Okay, so the highlights now, you know, the highlights is basically going to be, the best songs on the album, the songs that I would recommend to, if you wanted to check out an album that you haven't heard before or something like that, the highlights, not only would I say that, but also for those who are familiar with the album, these are my picks of the highlights, the best songs on the album, and things like that. And basically it speaks for itself. Everybody know what a highlight is. So so that's what you're going to get in this video, as well as other videos when I discuss discographies, albums, and things like that. So without further delay, let's get to it. So of course, you got to start with the opener, which is the title track, and that's Road to the Riches, and one of the memorable openers, when I was 5 years old, I realized there was a road at the end. I would win lots of pots of gold. That right there, and like I said here, that memorable opening line, it sets the perfect tone, not just for the song itself, but for the rest of the album. And like I said, it's definitely one of hip hop's best album openers. If you ever wanted to know what Kool G Rap could bring to the table, that song was it. And it's a good place to start. If I was recommending him to somebody, I would definitely start with that particular song, because it's great stuff. And I also said, striving for the finer things in life is the theme here, told in a charismatic form. And G Rap always had charisma on the mic, always had it. Even with the lisp, you can almost, he was so good that you could forget that he had a lisp, but still good stuff. And of course, 5 out of 5, classic song. All right, next up, next highlight is a demo. Um, check the bars. Before I'm competing, you all be deleted. You said I suck, instead I succeeded. Fan fascinator. I supply data according to the groove. I'm a real smooth operator. I mean, look, man. I mean, who can rap like that today, man? I mean, just great stuff. I take a fiend to the extreme, to the climax, and those who sleep will have a wet dream. I mean, great stuff, man. Um, and also regarding now the version that made the album was something akin to a remix, because as I note here, there was a dope original 12-inch version that was released in 86, and that joint is way better than the one that we got on the album. But still, both of them are pretty good. And like I note here, if this is the single that led to G Rap and Polo getting the deal, as well as his appearance on the symphony, I can see why, because it's a dope song. He went all out. And again, you really don't hear artists put that much time and effort into their demos in a current form. And then again, I don't really think artists make demos anymore, or at least if they do make demos, it's not like it used to be, because way back when, you had to put in work to get your demo to a label or to get your demo to an artist, whether they were established or not. Today, you can make some in the comfort of your own house and upload it to YouTube or whatever. And next thing you know, you may have a hit that goes viral and hit the radio. You just never know. So again, dope song here. Another 5 out of 5 song, definitely great stuff. And speaking of great stuff, that takes me to the next highlight, Men at Work. So like I said, so many quotables there. If I was to put the quotables here, I list the whole song. I mean, it's just that good. And lyrically, he's on fire with the nice wordplay, the supreme breath control. I mean, you couldn't miss it if you tried. And as he said in the issue of the Source magazine, which is issue 72, with Mike Tyson on the front, he said, "This is his all-time personal favorite, showing his raw lyrical skills and cleverness." And I agree. And it's a definite 5 out of 5 song. Men at work, dope stuff, man. Moving on, Truly Yours. I like this one. Way back in the days, you was big as a cow, but look at you now. At jams, you say, ow. I mean, man, like I said, a dope hip hop letter from G Rap to the chick who felt she was better than him and everyone else. Again, you really don't get songs like that anymore. But then again, in present day 2024, a, a, a battle of the sexes type song or anything close to it, it's not going to have the same effect because, of course, with the way things are now, everybody's going to have something to say about it. So, but at any rate, another 5 out of 5 song, definitely good. And speaking of definitely good, we go to Trilogy of Terror. I love this joint. And like I said here, a banger that sounds nice in the ride to this day. I mean, the bass is just crazy. He's on point with the lyrics, and the Trilogy of Terror in this case, that's G Rap, Dr. Butcher, and DJ Polo. He starts out the gate. I run rappers like racers, cut them like razors, burn them like lasers, and stun them like phasers. I mean, he was going in. And then you get to the second verse. So-called MCs are free so cold they get viewed and examined in a test tube. If you're a square, you'll freeze into an ice cube. I mean, my God, man. He was going in on this one, man. So another 5 out of 5 song. Rhymes I express. He said these rhymes I designed is called poetry, and an energetic expression of those rhymes is on full display here. Um, good stuff, good stuff. Poison, another classic with multiple quotables. And longtime fans may know that the poison, when G Rap says poison in the song, that was actually sampled by Bell Biv DeVoe for their classic of the same title, Poison. And I believe they said that um G Rap, of course, gave them their blessing to use that sample in their song. Now, in an ironic twist, BBD's version is a little more remembered than Kool G Rap's version. You may still hear Poison on Bell Biv DeVoe's Poison on the radio today, but not necessarily G Rap's. But it's a dope song. And also a notable point of the song, like I note here, is that he says towards the end, what I say rather, G Rap and Polo at the end, they said, not only do they make the case that the song will be banned because it's so dope, but Polo said he called somebody a big fat sap sucker. Now, I don't know how true this is, but just listening to this song and thinking about the original version of It's a Demo, it sounds like they were throwing a shot at Heavy D, because if you listen to It's a Demo, and I want to say the Overweight Lovers in the House, or one of them songs from the first Heavy D and the Boys album, Living Large. It sounds like Heavy D kind of either drew influence from Kool G Rap or they bit Kool G Rap. Now, again, I don't know how true that is, but like I said, Polo calling somebody a big fat sap sucker. I mean, and I'm not saying that Heavy D was a big fat sap sucker, and rest in peace to him. But you just got the feeling that he was talking about somebody that wasn't a random threat or whatever. He was directing that to somebody, So we got that. And then from there, the only low point on this album is Cars. And like I say here, the flow, lyrics, and the beat, you can tell it was something right out of the Run DMC playbook from 84 to 88, but it wasn't a good fit for G Rap. But they kept it short and to the point. It wasn't 5 or 6 minutes. So that was that. And also, just to piggyback on something for a bit now, in my case, highlights are going to be songs that range from 4 stars to 4.5 out, excuse me, 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5, and 5 out of 5. Now, low points would basically be songs that are 2.5 out of 5 and under. So in this case, that's the only point on this album, but everything else was pretty much Great stuff, great classic stuff. And finally, I concluded that the debut was highly effective, a truly dope, energetic piece of work that has aged so well. And even the lesser songs like Cause doesn't bring this album down. And it was G Rap at the top of his game on the mic. And I do think that this album did feature some of the most hard hitting beats of Marley Marl's career, probably next to the no, not hell no, not 14 shots to the dome. LL Cool J's Mama Said Knock You Out. And trust me, I'm gonna get to that on my channel at some point too. But yeah, pretty much a good, good debut, and I gave it 5 stars. Great stuff. All right. Next up, we got the debut coming 2 years later in 1990 on August 14th. Wanted Dead or Alive. And this one, you can just look at the cover and tell that they were about to go in a different direction. And, we're going to get into that. And yeah, I own the original pressing of this album. Okay, so highlights. We start with the opener, Streets of New York, which is a real good song. G Rap, he wasted no time with his very descriptive take on a topic that would be touched on frequently as the 90s progressed, and that would be the ghetto. So, you can almost say that it started here, but, then again, I would say that the ghetto was probably touched on by others, but I think G Rap put a real defined twist on it that made it, like I said, such a topic that would be in on just about any album you could think of as the 90s progressed. But his version was just great. It focuses on the life and times of New York and what goes on in the ghetto portion of the city. And I also said whether it was based in reality or not. And in some cases, most of what he said was you couldn't deny the importance of a song like this. And you really don't hear songs like this anymore. Not saying that ghettos don't exist, but you really don't hear songs like that today. And even if you did, it would take a certain caliber of artist to pull it off, because you wouldn't hear no no mumble mouth rapper talking about the ghetto, but I digress. But again, 5 out of 5, a definite good way to start the album. Next up, we got the title track, Wanted Dead or Alive. This joint was produced by Eric B, one half of the Eric B and Rakim. And he was behind some of the productions on this album as well. So, he was pretty good behind the boards too. I also said that he introduced the hip hop word to what would eventually become some of hip hop's best storytelling, initiating mafioso rap in one fell swoop. And he did influence a lot of other artists, a lot of other artists to follow suit later. And that is exactly what happened. Um, G Rap is on the run from the authorities, and lyrically and otherwise, nothing was standing his way. And basically, when you look at the bulletin that came at the end of the song, it basically would be continued, and that would be continued on the third album, which is Live and Let Die. So again, another 5 out of 5 song, great storytelling there. Um, bad to next highlight, bad to the bone with a style like Al Capone. I mean, great stuff here. And check out the bars. He said, "And I max while you be waxing your Cadillac, smooth as a sax, but I can cut you like an axe. Big spinner because I'm a winner like Bruce Jenner. I burn all beginners and let them simmer like a TV dinner." Oh my God, man. And like I said, he never had a problem, Professor, how dope he was on the mic. And he was, hence the title, Bad to the Bone. I mean, great stuff. Next up, Talk Like Sex. Now, this joint, man, like I said here, in certain ways it is for the ladies, but I'm pretty sure that most ladies then and probably now, if they heard this, they would be turned off because again, lyrically, he's just so straightforward. And with a song like this, he won't gonna sugarcoat anything, and he certainly didn't. And it was backed by an ill sample of Sly Johnson's "Different Strokes," you know, and he was vulgar as ever, you know. And I kind of had a little typo here, but it's all good. I didn't mean to um put the over in ill sample once again, but it's okay. Um, Again, when you listen to it, you get the vibe that he's playing, but he's still serious with his words, and it's debatable at best as to whether a song like that would see the light of day today. I mean, it probably would, but again, everybody would have something to say about it, But back in the day, that wasn't the case. So, it may be a controversial song to some, and but if you take it for what it is, it's damn good, and it really is. And he would follow this up on the next album, and I'll be talking about that as well. Um, 5 out of 5 for that. Then we go to Play It Again, Polo, another highlight. The guy said, "Your brainstorms don't even drizzle." Wow. And like I said, an awesome display of wordplay, breath control, and multi-syllabic rhyming. I mean, great stuff. 5 out of 5. And we get another 5 out of 5 with Erase Racism featuring Big Daddy Kane and the late Biz Markie. Rest in peace to him. Kane said, "We got the better of this world of prejudice. People make peace and learn to live equal." Relevant in 1990 and definitely relevant 34 years later, like I said. And a song like this meant something back in 1990. Now, if we was to get a song like this today, again, it would take a certain caliber of artist to pull it off, you know, because otherwise it's going to just be for nothing. And one more thing I want to mention about this song, I was talking about this song on a forum way back when. Remember forums, hip hop forums, which are probably extinct now. But somebody had mentioned that Biz Markie, it seemed like he was in such a hurry to bring the song to an end when it closed. And when you listen to it, it does sound like it. I mean, he was trying to get the hell out of there for some reason. But other than that, the hook is a little silly, but it makes its points. Still a 5 out of 5 song. And as we continue with the highlights, Kool is back. I love this joint. This is a Eric B produced banger. He said, "You wish your name had a G, but to be a better G boy, you got to play your strategy." I said, "Play with strategy." What in the world? Okay, all right, I need to I need to check that. I probably was typing a little too fast. But at any rate, this is my favorite song on the album. And the same wordplay and breath control that was on Play It Again, Polo, it was on this song, and the flow was much faster. And like I said, Eric B, he was behind the boards, and he came with an ill sample of Little Royal and the Swing Masters Razor Blade. I mean, great stuff. Again, 5 out of 5 for this one. Play It Cool, probably one of the most mellow G Rap songs you'll ever hear. 5 out of 5 for that. Death Wish, again, good stuff. Gangster, dope, and aggressive. You're gonna meet a death wish even if you try to see G Rap on the mic. He said, okay, parental discretion is advised. He said, "I got your ass on target. You got beef, you better save it for the motherfucking meat market." I mean, just going in, man. My God. Okay. Excuse me. So next up, we get Rikers Island. Now, this classic, again, it was released in 1987 with the Rhyme Time B-side. And I did think then and now that it was an odd choice to put on this album. And I don't think it was a bonus track, but it was odd to put this on the album because it should have been on Road to the Riches. Take take Cars off and put this song on there. You have the album would still be great, but that song would have been a welcome addition rather than Cars. And like I said, it seemed like it was added at the last minute. And in the interview, G Rap said he didn't even know it was on the album until years after the fact, which is kind of interesting, but it's all good. And no real excuse me, no real low points on the album to speak of. Everything is pretty much straightforward, dope. I don't think there's any song on the album that's under 4 out of 5. So that right there, no, there's no low points here. I said this sophomore album does give Road to the Riches a run for its money. And to this day, I still tend to like it a little more. I think so. Again, dope production, tight album. G Rap was lyrically on a roll at this point, coming with social commentary, descriptive storytelling, and it holds up just like his debut. And the Source magazine that I quoted earlier, they note that with this album, he re-solidified his position in the game as one of the true masters of the mic, and that's true. So definitely great stuff there. Now, I left the rating off because still to this day, I'm trying to decide if it's a 4.5-star album or if it's a 5-star album. So I still have to figure that out, y'all. Next up, we get the third album, which really I've always said that this joint, Live and Let Die, released on November 24th, 1992. This is my favorite G Rap and Polo album. Now you'll notice that I don't have the highlights and lowlights. Okay, let me explain. Now, with the Road to the Riches album and the Wanted Dead or Alive album, I was so descriptive with those because on my medium.com site, and I'm going to leave the link for these as well. You can check out my work there from a hip hop standpoint. So on my Medium site, I have my full reviews of these albums and much more. So I basically pulled highlights from those posts and I included them here because I didn't want to put them all on here and verbatim. I still wanted to work smarter and not harder. So the reason why you don't see a review for Live and Let Die is because even on my old blog from back in the day, I never got a chance to do a review of it. I was going to turn it into a project, but I never got the time to do so. So that's that. Now I will say I'm probably going to end up doing something for this album on my channel at some point because I got to do it. It's basically what I would consider a movie on wax, and I mean it's great stuff, man. And I'm looking at the booklet right now, so I think five of my favorite songs on here are, of course, the classic Ear Street Blues, Two to the Head with Ice Cube, Scarface, and Bushwick Bill. Rest in peace to Bushwick Bill. Of course, Number One with a Bullet with Big Daddy Kane. I know that song by heart. And man, if I was to start quoting it now, I'm gonna sing the whole song. So in the interest of time, I'll let that go. Um, Two other favorite songs to complete the five, I would say Live and Let Die, the title track, and maybe Edge of Sanity, you know. But again, great album. I think the last time I rated this, I gave it 5 stars, I think. But I really like this album, and it was produced by Sir Jinx and Kool G Rap, and longtime fans would know Sir Jinx from his work with Ice Cube, on the Death Certificate album and other things. And there was some tracks on here produced by Trackmasters, Tone and Poke. So again, longtime fans will know them from their work with Def Jam artists and stuff like that. But they made the Ill Street Blues track, so major props to them. And remember when I said that, Wanted Dead or Alive, the sequel on here was still Wanted Dead or Alive. It was a little more fast paced, but a nice continuation of the song. And then on the Wanted Dead or Alive album, you had the Talk Like Sax song, where the sequel to that was okay, fuck you, man. And that he was even more raunchy on that one. So again, great album. Love it. It's my favorite of the DJ Polo and Kool G Rap albums. So again, on this channel, I'm going to do something on this album at some point. So stay tuned for that. All right, next up, we go to 1995, which is my favorite year in hip hop history. Now, at this point, G Rap and Polo, they split up. They went their separate ways. So Kool G Rap, I mean, hell, the man, it was a no-brainer that he could handle himself on the solo tip. So that's what we get here with this album. Definitely one of 1995's best. It was released on September 26th. And as you can see, I own the CD. So next up, we go to the highlights. The title track, 456. You can take a look here and see what G Rap had to say about this song and the album, and it was courtesy of genius.com. Again, after the intro, we go straight into this. And I mean, great. 456 is in the mix. I'm hitting you with tricks. Red, black, time to get the bread black. I mean, great stuff. I mean, I love it. I'm rolling on every corner that I know inside the city. Kiddies, I got a fat in my excuse me, hold on. Let me go back on that. He said, I'm rolling on every single corner that I know inside the city. Kiddies, I got a fat in my pocket going pretty, looking pretty. I mean, I stumbled a little bit there, but I think you get it. I mean, just a dope song, and he conveys the image that life is a gamble. And I mean, and like I said here, I don't think I've ever heard a song that turns a simple art such as gambling into one descriptive piece of work. And DJ Butcher, Dr. Butcher came with a thumping production with the well-timed samples of Nas's New York State of Mind, which was already a classic at this point, and Weather Report's Mysterious Traveler. Great way to start the album, 5 out of 5. And speaking of 5 out of 5, we go to It's a Shame, another classic. And once again, it's Big G running the number rackets, wearing Pele jackets, fast loop tattoos. I'm well up in the millionaire bracket. I mean, tight, man. I mean, so tight. And like I said here, coming off of the Live and Let Die album, G Rap, he was a made man. And the first verse, it really highlights it, because he came with a boss of all bosses flow. Um, and I also noted this in a stroke of fine storytelling and wordplay, it's a double dose of details. On one end, he's more than willing to dine in all of the riches of the life, which includes the usual money, cars, clothes, women, drugs, you name it. But on the flip side, he lets you know he's not 100% satisfied with having to make this choice. It's a damn shame what I got to do to get the money. That says it all right there. And again, 5.5 out of 5 for that classic. You know, Man, great stuff. Well up in the millionaire bracket. All right. Next up, Take 'em to War featuring B1 and Grimm. And I also said that it's noteworthy that a song like this, featuring an awesome sample of a divine image by David Axelrod, it can be flipped into some gangster. And if you don't know what that song is, take a listen. The guests, they bring some dope verses to the table, but again, G Rap, he just kills it with his verse, and it closes the song. I mean, it was. I mean, I don't think anybody else could have followed that. So 5 out of 5 for that. Executioner style. I mean, man, talk about gangster. That's exactly what this song is. And I mean, the bars. I mean, look at what I highlighted here. I mean, man, because it's the rootin' tootin' with the 6 shooter, pull a hole in your trooper so big niggas could hula hoop you. I mean, just gangster. I mean, just gangster with it. Cause G Rap ain't that nigga that try to play. Hold on, cause G Rap ain't that nigga that try to play as nigga lay low or get yourself a pair of wings or hop in a halo. I will pull the Glock. I will pull the Glock and clear the blocking when I cock and get laid and play out of pocket with a rocket in your eye socket. I mean, who's messing with that, man? You know, and and also throughout the years, I always wondered if that was DJ Polo on the hook because it sure sounded like him, you know. But at any rate, appropriately titled banger, it find G Rap at his most thugged out best, even before such a term was created, and it sounded like something straight out of the Live and Let Die playbook, and it worked. I mean, great stuff. So gangster. Um, okay, next highlight. Tap the bottom of the bottom for the brothers. Keep it real on the street money and look out for one another. Love this song. And as you can see right there, G Rap, he described the song in that genius.com interview. And I was always under the impression that the stories told on this song, they were based in reality. And whether they were or not, it makes the song effective, and again, with another sample, this time by Art Farmer, Soul Size. But yeah, great song. Tap the bottom of the bottle for the brothers. Keep it real on the street money and look out for one another. Love this song. Next highlight, blowing up in the world. I always say that when it comes to certain songs, and in this case, a rags to riches song, even though you've heard songs like that many times before, as long as they're done right, it's no problem. And in this case, G Rap, his version was pretty good, and it's his version that sets his apart from everyone else. Because even at this point, you had the rags to riches from nothing to something type song, and this was just another one of them. Now, the next point that I want to make here, this is what I concluded when I initially did the review. I said it's really a shame that he didn't blow up in hip hop like he should have. And I don't blame anyone if they happen to name him as one of the most underrated MCs in hip hop history. He has some classics under his belt that he has influenced a great number of artists, including the guest on the next song. But in between transitioning between record labels, I transitioning in between record labels, and an unfortunate lack of true promotion for someone with his skill set, he never really had that true breakout moment that he deserved to have, even dating back to the late 80s. And it's always good that longtime fans have really kept his name out there, and that's true. I'm saying my own words are true, but work with me here. But yeah, good song. And that takes us into this classic, Fast Life featuring Nas, the greatest of all time. So this song, courtesy of the sampling of Happy by Surface, which is another classic, love this song. Like I said here, one of the dopest collaborations you'll ever hear. Um, and yeah, Russell Simmons did say that he passed on giving Nas a deal because they already had a G Rap, and and like I said here, I wonder what Russell Simmons thought about that because you know they then again it would have been interesting if Nas had signed the Def Jam, but it's all good. But at any rate, this classic again, great stuff. Classic. The Boss G Rap bringing Nas along for the ride, fully indulging in a life of riches, almost as if Nas was an underboss here. And I also concluded this. I said, speaking of Nas, the gifted MC was already in Nas Escobar mode here, and after dropping Illmatic in '94, along with that name change, Nas himself was a made man when It Was Written was released on July 2nd, 1996. How about that for continuation? And yeah, I'm probably one of the only people who ever drew that conclusion because as you listen to Nas, what you get here is the message Nas, street dreams Nas, like a precursor to that. You didn't get the world is yours Nas or it ain't hard to tell Nas or halftime Nas. But either way, 5 out of 5 for this classic. And again, definitely one of the dopest collaborations you ever hear. And the last highlight, we get to Ghetto Knows. Um, More storytelling here, almost in an interrelated fashion. The first half talks about the ghettos of New York, the city that never sleeps, and the somewhat usual instances of crime and related things involved with that life. And the second half finds him telling an extreme story of true survival. Definitely 4 out of 5, and it had that sound straight out of 1995, and longtime fans would know it if they hear it. So my final words here, simply put, I love this album. If Living Let Die showcased the true gangster side of G Rap, 1995 showed him as a complete made man, and that's fully realized on this album. He hadn't missed one step on the lyrical side of things, and this is truly one of his best albums, definitely. And like I said before, it was one of 1995's best albums, and the source did pick it in their year review album that year, and it did age well. And longtime fans revisit it as soon as possible. Newer fans, it's a strong recommendation to check out, and it's 4.5 stars for this one. Again, great album. Kind of slept on, but still great. All right, so moving on, this album again, I never really intended to review this album, and much like Live and Let Die, but on a more extended note, this album released on what is that, October 28th, 1998. It's hold on, that's right. That's right. Yeah, this album is just pretty much one big gangster movie on wax, and it was pretty good. I remember giving it 4 stars, but it's been such a long time since I played it, and as a matter of fact, sometime soon I may revisit it. I may pull a CD out and check it out. But yeah, definitely 4 stars for this one. It was released very quietly in 1998, and I think the only fans that probably know about it is the diehard G Rap fans. So we'll be moving on from that. Okay, we skip ahead to 2002. The Giacana Story, released on November 26th of that year. One thing about this album is that, like I said here, it was supposed to have been released in October 2000, but it probably was pushed back and delayed so much because of label issues with Rockers. Remember them? It was delayed for 2 years, and eventually it was released on Koch Records and Independent. And several songs were cut from the original release, and still to this day, nobody knows why. Now, if he's talked about that in an interview, I'm not sure, so I may have to do some research on that one. So continuing on with the highlights, we got Holla Back, which featured AZ, Tito, and Nas. Again, 4 out of 5 for this one. Nas, he steals the show here, along with G Rap. Um, Stealing the show on a song with G Rap is not easy, but Nas, he came through with a tight verse here. So a good song on that one. It's Nothing featuring Joel Ortiz, one fourth of the group that used to be called Slaughterhouse. Again, another dope song here, aggressive, lyrically gangstified, and fast paced. G Rap said he'll give your body and nuts a divorce. Wow. All right. Thug for Life, This is what I would call vintage G Rap on the opener, and it sounded better than I remembered. 4 out of 5 for this one. Thug Chronicles featuring Havoc and Mobb Deep. Definitely a dope song. And for those who remember, months after the G Rap album came out, Mobb Deep did drop a Free Agents Murder mixtape, which I still do have. And on the bonus disc, there was a version of this song with a different beat. But either way, still pretty good for the most part. No complaints. Um, Blaze with Y'all featuring Jinx the Juvie. I always like this one. And Rock Wilder definitely gave them a banger for it. And again, Jinx and G Rap, they go in lyrically on this one. G Rap says that Pop goes to Weezer. If niggas want it, then Pop goes to Eagles. We can draw guns and rock like the Beatles. Great stuff. Next highlight, we got Black Widow. I said that if a movie was made with this title and based on this one song, this would be a hell of a theme for it. G Rap tells the story of a widow who has been married 5 times, does everything you could think of as outlined in the hook, and could take care of herself all at the same time. And again, excellent form of storytelling, must be heard to be appreciated. And I gave it 4.5 out of 5. And I think it probably was the hook that stopped me from giving it a full-fledged 5, but it's all good. Fight Club featuring Shaw Queen. It may not have been the first time that he used the double time flow in his career, but on that song, it worked. 4 out of 5 for that. My Life, which I think was the album's first and only single. Um, it was a less of an introspective look into the life of G Rap, and more of a look at where he was in 2002. And it did have a Roger Troutman inspired hook. Rest in peace to Mr. Troutman. The Streets, another highlight. This is where it all goes down. There's no story here, but you can listen to it and tell that the approach was going to be aggressive, when you're talking about anything involving the streets. So 4 out of 5 for that one. And then lastly, um, Gangsta Gangsta featuring the Black Gorilla family, Ma Barker, who may or may not still be G Rap's wife. Not sure. 40 Cal Hammers and Glory Wars. I always liked this song. The beat was dope and lyrically it's on top. Lyrically it's sharp. Everybody involved came with dope verses. And like I said, I think it was the beat. And I think it might be a typo here because the only reason why I said I was overrated is because I think I gave it a 5 out of 5 at some point, but we can probably settle with 4 out of 5 for this. Um, so my final words on this one. Initially, I did rate it 4 stars for a time, but I increased it to 4.5. It's that good and it aged well. The production was very good. G Rap was still lyrically sharp at this point, and his style did kind of mirror 4.5, 4, 5, 6. It's not better than the album, but you can tell some comparisons here and there. I also said the constant delays didn't help this album at all because it was very slept on when it came out, and only the hardcore longtime G Rap fans would have been checking for it. Um, and I also didn't think that the cutting of the songs listed um, hurt the album, but having them remastered in a lost tapes like format would be the way to go. Now, I did add some thoughts here. I said, I remember this being on Spotify at one point, taken off, then put back on, but there's an advanced copy of this album featuring some of the songs that were cut from the final album. It's on there right now as I type this, and it still may very well be on there right now, And as you can see, you can take a look at the final lineup of songs here. Wow, Ride On featuring Jagged Edge. G Rap is a villain. Let's see. Then you go to the remix with Round and Round with Jonelle. Remember that from back in 2001? So as you look at these songs, it was interesting that all this got cut, and look at this. You had Thug Out featuring Black Child and Tom Murder from Murder Inc. So it would have been interesting to hear that. So that's what we got here. And again, after listening to this, I did say that it was clear that this is the last true great G Rap album, and I kind of still stand by that. And the aforementioned albums. Now, I'm not going to read what I say here. I'm just going to get to those when I get to the rest of the project. But I still do believe that, yeah, all them other albums that I'm about to go into, with the exception of one, pale in comparison to the Giacomo story. And like I said, also lyrically and verbally speaking, he hasn't been the same. And he hasn't gotten better with age. He's had his moments, but the guy pushing 60, so naturally he's gonna change. But with all that being said, I do strongly recommend the album, especially to those who haven't heard it before. And if you haven't played in a while, definitely check it out. And it's the last time we would hear G Rap in his prime. And yeah, that has to be accurate. All right. This one, oh my goodness. Okay. This was the first and only album from the crew, Five Family Click, Igloo Entertainment. So this was released on October 21st, 2003, and it was released very quietly, and let me just read what I typed here. I said, now to be clear, there were no real highlights on this album to speak of, and if there were, there probably was very few of them. But what I say here is that 3 stars for this album. The potential was there, but the actual execution on all levels was lacking quite a bit. G Rap did his thing, especially in terms of trying to hold it all together. But even a legend like him could only do so much in this case. In addition, Ma Barker showed the most promise overall. And honestly, there was no chance that 40 Cal Hammers and Glory Wars will break out on their own. Also, in my opinion, none of the songs on this album came close to matching the tight gangster gangster from the Giacomo Story album. And like I said, it was released very quietly in 2003, and only the hardest of hardcore G Rap fans would have known about it. And like I said here, I think I was in FYE one time in the latter part of 2003 or the early part of 2004, and I just saw it and I grabbed it because again, there were no commercials for it. It was no advertisements for it. I never saw it in the Source magazine, so I was like, this G Rap, let me get this joint. So that's how I got it. So a slight recommendation to avoid. Nothing to hear on this one. Definitely a forgettable piece of work, even with G Rap attached to it. Okay, half a clip released on September 25th, 2007. It was decent, but nothing. I mean, nothing that you really need to go back and check out. Now, will I revisit it? Maybe, but I recall not liking it too much. And I remember somebody telling me that it was produced mostly by DJ Premier, but I don't think that was the case. So, again, this came out in 2007 and again released quietly. He was dropping albums, but you didn't hear about him. You didn't hear about him like that. All right. Next up, okay, we got Rich's Royalty and Respect. This was released on May 30th, 2011. And I'll just read what I said here. And as you can see, these are my thoughts. The opening Pimp Troll was not the best opener, but it attempted to make its points. The decent songs on this album, 3 joints produced by Super Dave, In Too Deep, featuring Heather Walker, Sad, and Pillow Talk. And I said that's where the decent ends with this album. And I don't like saying this about a G Rap album, but the remainder of this album is simply uninspired and not a good listen. Your chick chose me, the meaning of your love, money over bees, and pages of my life, which is slightly good, all come across cliched as hell, with G Rap covering these same topics before and better. Even the Havoc assisted Alchemist produced American Nightmare falls short, and he does himself and the listeners no favors by switching up his flow and voice on The Real Thing. I have no additional thoughts on this one, unfortunately, and it basically confirmed why I felt the way I did when I checked out the samples. I know you're probably saying, well, damn, Wayne, this is Kool G Rap. You think you were a little hard on this one, considering this is your first time hearing it? I mean, my thoughts and opinions and ratings on this album won't change. I still do think it's the worst album of G Rap's career, and that had nothing to do with him aging. It just he had a sluggish flow on the album, and the production wasn't good. And if your flow is not good and the production is not that good, chances are you're gonna have a mediocre project. Which again I gave 2 stars for this one. So largely for them 3 Super Dave tracks that I mentioned, and I said I have no desire to revisit it, and chances are I won't, so that's that for that album. So we can skip over that one. And next up, We go to the 2020, excuse me, the 2013 release of The Godfathers with him and Necro. Now, prior to that release, I hadn't heard that much from Necro. So when I saw this, I think I saw it on the Hip Hop DX website, and it was I remember anticipating it because I remembered how bad the previous album was. So I was like, okay, we can get something better here. And so that's where we come in here. So G Rap and Necro, they handled the mic duties, and Domingo, another underrated name, he was behind the boards. They did come out with a pre-kill volumes 1 and 2, which were basically mixtapes, but I never checked those out, even with the new material. So my thoughts on this one, I said, let's see, Teflon Don's a decent opener. It did its job in setting the tone for the rest of the album. They spoke their piece and they were out. I knew that there was going to be a mafia mob influence on the album, and that's what it was. The city, short and sweet, which found the artist big enough. NY. I like the Godfather influence, Omerta, and the closing title track. There are some other decent cuts on the album, such as American Sickos, Black Medicine, and aptly title selections like The Pain, High Tension, and Trigger for Hire. And of course, the second half of the album, outside of a few decent songs, especially the closer, becomes a little repetitive and things slow down as a result. You know, that's clear on Will Kill You, Crook Catastrophe, and the Gun Blast Kid, Gangster, which could have lost at least a minute and a half, and Heart Attack, which suffers from a forgettable beat. So I all but came to the conclusion that what you heard was what you got. I gave it 3.5 stars. Um, at the time, it sounded like a breath of fresh air when it came out, but I think almost 10 years after the fact, I don't think I'm going to revisit this one because I only played it that one time, and that was when I did on my old blog back when it came out. So the chances of me revisiting it probably slim to none. All right. This one, Return of the Dawn, produced by Moss, released on June 2nd, 2017. Now, I recall really liking this one. I gave it 4 stars. I think I only played it twice since I got it. And yeah, I want to say I ordered it online. I think from undergroundhiphop.com. I think that's where I ordered it from. I don't think I got it from Amazon, but yeah, definitely 4 stars for this one. No complaints about it. It definitely was the best thing that he did since the Giacono Story album. May revisit this at some point, but yeah, it was pretty good. And lastly, we have the most recent thing that he's dropped, which was The Last of a Dying Breed on December 9th, 2022. I remember liking this one. I may go back and revisit this one. I don't think it was ever released physically. I think it was only on Spotify and iTunes and things like that. But I may go back and check that out. And with that being said, we've come to the end of this particular video. Again, G Rap. I mean, what more can you say about him? He's one of the all-time greats. Definitely one of the more underrated MCs, even with his years in the game and influencing a lot of artists. Afterwards, he definitely did his thing, and for that, major props and respect go to him. My favorite album, like I said, with DJ Polo, Live and Let Die. My favorite solo album from him is definitely 4, 5, 6. You can't go wrong with either one of those. To this day, I still play those albums with DJ Polo. I still play 4, 5, 6. I play the Giacono Story from time to time. I may revisit Roots of Evil at a certain point, probably not anytime soon, but I'm definitely going to revisit Return of the Dawn and Last of a Dying Breed, which Last of a Dying Breed may or may not be his retirement album. So I'm definitely going to be checking and see if he drops something else. But other than that, yeah, this was my post to my number 10 favorite MC of all time, Kool G Rap. Mad props to you, and thank you for all of your contributions to hip hop. So, on that note, I would like to thank you all for listening to this particular episode. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts about Kool G Rap over the years. Is he in your top 10? Is he underrated, overrated? What's your favorite album from him? Your least favorite album? Just let me know what you think. and we can proceed from there. But other than that, I know you all be looking forward to the next one, which will be number 9. And spoiler alert, that's KRS-One, so that one should be good. But other than that, if you like this particular video, hit the like button, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, remember, the power of the mind is valuable. Take care, y'all.